Chapter 1. I woke up. Again. But this time something was different. I wasn't lying in a pool of blood. My ribs weren't screaming in pain. Instead, I was back on that day, the day I ran away with James. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My back was soaked in cold sweat, but there were no wounds. No scars. Just a second chance handed to me like a gift from the heavens. I wasn't going to waste it. I stepped out of my room, and there they were, my parents. Their faces were so familiar it hurt. My dad's hair was still dark, untouched by the gray that would come with time, though the worry lines were already there, etched deep on his face. "Claire, do you really have to marry that worthless boy?" My mom's voice was thick with frustration, her eyes red from crying. I'd put her through hell before, and even now she looked like she was on the verge of breaking. Seeing them again, looking so alive, so real, brought a rush of emotion that I could barely contain. It was like a piece of me that had been hollow suddenly filled with warmth. Without thinking, I rushed to my mother and wrapped my arms around her. The words came out in a choked whisper. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was so selfish. I made you worry so much." They thought I was still lost, still trapped in that fantasy that James had spun around me like a web. They couldn't stand to watch me throw my life away, not after everything they'd done to raise me. My father sighed, shaking his head, probably thinking I was still the same stubborn girl. He turned to leave the room, defeated. Before he could go, I dropped to my knees. Tears spilled down my face as I spoke, my voice cracking. "I swear, I'll never see him again. If I do, may I be hit by a car." Both of them rushed to my side, horrified. My mother clamped her hand over my mouth. "Don't say things like that," she scolded, her voice trembling. "Words like that have consequences." Even though they were angry and disappointed, they still wanted me safe. Alive. They looked at me, eyes filled with doubt. I couldn't blame them. My change of heart seemed too sudden, too drastic. It wasn't until I insisted on spending a day and night kneeling in the family shrine that they finally believed me. After calming them down, I walked over to the window. James was there, pacing by the gate, his face filled with impatience, probably wondering what was taking me so long. My hands clenched into fists. This time I was going to crush him. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. A sleek black Bentley gliding smoothly down the street. The car slowed as it passed James, and then came to a stop at the gate. My breath caught in my throat. Ethan stepped out, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. His sharp, chiseled features were partially hidden in the shadows, but there was no mistaking him. With a casual grace, he adjusted his suit jacket, his eyes lifting toward the window. Toward me. It felt like he could see straight through the glass, straight through me. His gaze was cold, calculating. Yet there was something else there, something I couldn't quite place. Why did he feel different today? I swallowed hard. Even with all the time that had passed, even with the second chance I'd been given, Ethan still had that intimidating presence that made it hard to breathe. "Get a grip, Claire," I scolded myself. "You're not that girl anymore." I pulled myself together and made my way downstairs. When I reached the living room, I found Ethan standing by the cabinet, casually flipping through an old photo album from my childhood. He looked different. There was a strange quietness in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. His eyes softened as he turned each page, lingering on the photos like they meant something to him, like he was remembering something, something distant and precious. Chapter 2. Ethan and I had grown up together. Our families were old friends, and our marriage had been arranged long ago. In the beginning, Ethan had fought hard to make it happen, thinking it would make both families happy. But in my previous life, I'd been blind. James had swooped in and stolen my attention, turning my world upside down. I'd brought chaos into both our families, tearing everything apart in the process. In my desperation to get out of the marriage, I'd hurt Ethan over and over again. I threw cruel words at him, stabbed him with insults, and did everything I could to make him hate me. But he never fought back. Not once. He just took it silently, never abandoning me, no matter how much I pushed him away. Thinking back on it now, I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. Suddenly, Ethan turned, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my heart stutter. He started walking toward me, slow, deliberate. At some point, he had taken off his suit jacket and tossed it onto the couch. The white dress shirt he wore clung to his frame, showing off the hard lines of his muscles as he moved. There was something dangerous about the way he looked, like a predator sizing up its prey. I backed up until I hit the wall, trapped. His presence was overwhelming, suffocating in the best way. He was so close now I could smell the fresh, clean scent of his cologne. His hand slid around my waist, holding me in place, and I didn't dare move. His breath was hot against my neck, sending shivers down my spine. My heart raced, hammering in my chest. "You tell me," he said, his voice low and rough. "If I kissed you right now, if I didn't let you leave this house, would you still run away with him?" There was a dangerous edge to his words, a possessiveness I'd never seen before. His eyes burned with something dark, something wild. I stared at him wide-eyed, unable to speak. It took me a moment to recover. I shook my head, barely able to get the words out. "No, I'll break it off. Right now. I swear." I slipped out of his grasp and rushed downstairs, ready to send James packing for good. But Ethan followed. He didn't trust me to handle it alone. "I'll deal with him," Ethan said firmly. "Tell me what you want to say and I'll make sure he hears it. Every word." There was no room for debate in his tone. His eyes dared me to argue. I swallowed nervously and gave him a sheepish smile. "Just tell him. It's over." Ethan lit a cigarette, taking a slow drag before exhaling. Smart choice. I thought that would be the end of it, that Ethan would just send James off with a few harsh words. But I was wrong. By the time Ethan's men were done with him, James had multiple broken bones. The doctors said he might never walk again. Things had spiraled far beyond my control. In my previous life, Ethan had disapproved of James, sure, but he had never gone this far. He had always kept his distance, cold but never cruel. As I tried to make sense of it all, my phone rang. Fiona's voice chirped through the speaker, sticky sweet as always. "Claire, why didn't you visit James yesterday? Did you know he's in the hospital? You need to come see him right away." "He's devastated." I rolled my eyes and answered calmly, "It's over. Whatever happens to him now has nothing to do with me." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Fiona's voice shot up in disbelief. "What? I went through so much trouble to help you too. And now you're just going to break his heart?" I didn't bother responding. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, admiring my freshly painted nails. This time, no one was going to take what was mine. Chapter 3. In my last life, every time I put on something nice or got my nails done, James would always find some way to ruin it. Looking back, I can't believe how I let him get away with it. But back then, I was so lost in those cheesy campus romance novels that I genuinely thought he was my knight in shining armor. Now, it's ridiculous. I could laugh at how foolish I was. On my very first day of college, I was completely shut out. No one wanted to talk to me, and I felt isolated from the start. It was brutal. So when Fiona showed up, acting like my best friend right when I needed anyone, I clung to her. I was desperate to prove I wasn't some invisible loser and that I had value. She swooped in like a savior with sweet words and understanding smiles, and for a while I actually believed she cared. I thought she was my lifeline, the one person who saw me when no one else did. But Fiona? She was never really on my side. She had this way of subtly dragging me down, making herself look better in front of others by constantly putting me down. It was little things, but they added up. Before I knew it, my reputation had tanked, and I couldn't figure out why everyone seemed to dislike me. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, I see it all so clearly. I wasn't the problem. Fiona was. And the people around me, they were just too small-minded to see me for what I really was. I didn't fit in because I wasn't meant to. I was a swan and they were just chickens pecking at the ground. I don't need anyone to validate me. My worth doesn't come from others, it comes from me. It's something I carry within, something that shines through no matter what. Confidence. That's the real glow-up. So, I did what any self-respecting woman would do with this newfound clarity. I treated myself. I went out and bought everything I wanted. Clothes that made me feel bold, sexy, alive. I wasn't playing it safe anymore. I was done with safe. When I got home, loaded down with shopping bags, I caught my reflection in the mirror and didn't even recognize the girl staring back at me. She was fierce. She was in control. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like me. A line from a show I once watched popped into my head. Good fortune doesn't just fall into your lap. You have to earn it, step by step. That's exactly what I was going to do. I was going to build something better, something that no one could take from me. Feeling pretty pleased with myself, I called for my parents as I stepped into the house. No answer. The place was eerily quiet. I shrugged it off, figuring they were just out, and headed upstairs to drop off my bags. But when I reached my room, I froze in my tracks. A pair of men's shoes sat by the door. A chill ran down my spine. I knew those shoes. Ethan. I pushed open the door and sure enough, there he was, standing on the balcony, phone in hand, deep in conversation. He must have sensed me because he turned, his eyes meeting mine for a brief moment before he quickly ended the call. For a second, he just stood there like he wasn't sure what to do. Then, without a word, he grabbed his jacket and left in a hurry. I watched him go, confused. His ears were bright red, almost like he was embarrassed about something. I laughed to myself. Was it my outfit? Sure. I'd gone for something a little more daring today, but was it really that shocking? As his figure disappeared down the hallway, I couldn't shake this feeling bubbling up inside me. It was like a thought was forming, something big, something important, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I shook it off and checked my phone. 20 missed calls and a flood of messages. Turns out, my parents had decided to take a trip to France. They wanted to visit some old friends and take a break, get away for a while. In their texts, they left me a parting reminder. Take care of Ethan. Don't push him away with your sharp tongue. He cares about you more than you realize. I couldn't help but smile. They didn't need to worry. Time was fleeting and I was going to make sure I didn't waste any more of it. And that meant moving in with Ethan. I was not just moving in, I was going to start interning at his company too. I'd be by his side every step of the way. The thought made my heart race. I felt a weird mix of excitement and nerves. But mostly, I was ready. So ready. Later that evening, I finally arrived at his apartment. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the room. It felt heavy, like something was hanging in the air. Dragging my suitcase inside, I glanced around and saw Ethan sitting on the couch. He was twirling a lighter between his fingers, a look of deep concentration on his face. When he saw me, his expression darkened. His eyes, usually so calm, had a sharp edge to them, like he was holding something back. A cold knot formed in my stomach. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin prickle. I froze. I knew that look. It wasn't good. Without a word, I turned and made a break for the guest room. But before I could even reach the door, I felt his hands on me. In one swift motion, he lifted me off the ground and tossed me over his shoulder like I weighed nothing. Before I knew it, I was thrown onto the bed in the master bedroom, staring up at him as he leaned over me, his hand pinning my wrist to the mattress. His other hand gripped my jaw, forcing me to look him in the eyes. His gaze was intense, burning with something dark and dangerous. "You went to see James," he growled, his voice low and threatening. "Are you trying to put yourself in danger?" My heart pounded in my chest and I couldn't breathe. I knew I was in deep trouble. Chapter 4. His last words came out almost like a plea, softening the tension in the air. I pulled back slightly, my wide eyes staring up at him, all innocence, while the heat from his hand spread across my skin like a slow burn that crept through my whole body. God, he's hot. I slipped one hand free, casually reaching into my bag and pulling out a small notebook. My voice came out in a tiny, trembling whisper, like a kitten trying to be brave. "I didn't go to see James," I said, holding up the notebook like a peace offering. "You've been saying you can't sleep well lately, right? I went to the hospital to ask about it. I even learned some massage techniques." He paused for a moment, still skeptical, but then he released my wrist and took the notebook from me. Flipping through the pages, his shoulders relaxed slightly when he saw my messy handwriting filling the lines. The tension in his face softened, and he pinched the bridge of his nose with a sigh. "I'm sorry," he muttered, sounding more tired than angry now. I jumped to conclusions. My mistake. Of course, I knew he had people tailing me. He was never one to trust easily. But if I didn't play this just right, I'd never get the upper hand. Step 1 in making a man fall for you: make him feel guilty. Make him doubt his own actions. It worked. He left the room, probably to cool down. That night, after I moved into the apartment, the weather decided to put on a show. Thunder, lightning, howling wind, the whole dramatic package. Couldn't have asked for better timing. I've been afraid of storms since I was a kid. Ethan knows that. He's always known that. Step 2. Show vulnerability, especially after he already feels guilty. There's nothing like a little helplessness to tug at a man's heartstrings. I sighed loudly, hoping he might come to check on me. Seriously? I thought, staring at the ceiling. Is he really going to make me do all the work? I slid out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cool floor, and tiptoed to his room. The storm was loud enough to mask the sound of me opening the door. As soon as I cracked it open, the lights flicked on. Ethan was sitting up in bed, and the both of us locked eyes in surprise. I froze. He raised an eyebrow, that familiar, amused expression crossing his face like he'd caught me sneaking cookies from the jar. Still scared of storms? His voice was low, rough from sleep. I nodded, biting my lip, peeking up at him like a guilty child caught in the act. He sighed long and deep and then, without a word, lifted the blanket, inviting me in. I didn't need to be asked twice. I slipped under the covers, curling up on my side, half my face buried in the blanket. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him with wide, unblinking eyes. It didn't take long for him to catch on. "I'll take the floor," he muttered, already starting to get up. Before he could move, I grabbed the sleeve of his shirt, tugging it like a lifeline. "Ethan, it's cold." His jaw clenched, and for a second I thought I might have pushed him too far. But then, with a resigned sigh, he settled back onto the bed. As soon as he lay down, I scooted closer, pressing my body against his like I was trying to soak up all his warmth. And let me tell you, this man's body was something else. Hard muscle, broad shoulders, and a warmth that made you want to never leave. My hand started to wander, sliding down his chest, fingers brushing the hem of his shirt. I slowly lifted it, letting my fingers graze the hard ridges of his abs. Just as I was about to explore a little further, his hand shot out, grabbing mine in a firm grip. His eyes were dark, almost dangerous, as he looked down at me. "Claire," he said, voice low and warning, "if you keep this up, I can't promise I'll be able to stop." That's kind of the point, I thought, fully aware of what I was doing. But then out of nowhere he asked, "Were you like this with James too?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I looked up at him, and the heat in his eyes was gone, replaced with something cold, distant. I didn't answer. What was the point? Defending myself would only make me look guilty, and silence was better than trying to explain something that didn't need explaining. He let go of my hand, and I slipped out of bed, not looking back. The cold floor made me shiver as I padded back to the guest room. This guy, if he thought I was just going to roll over and give up, he had another thing coming. Chapter 5. He's clearly crazy about me, yet he's still pretending to play the whole "I'm too pure for this" act. Honestly, it's almost cute. Lying back on the guest's bed, I stared up at the ceiling, my mind wandering. I must have been halfway to falling asleep when I heard the soft creak of the door opening. I quickly shut my eyes, pretending to sleep, curious to see what he was up to. A few moments later, I felt myself pulled into a warm, solid embrace. His arms wrapped around me, strong and comforting. It would have been perfect if his loud, pounding heartbeat wasn't so distracting. "Seriously, can you keep it down a bit?" thought, amused. We stayed like that for what felt like ages, the air heavy with unsaid words, until at last, he whispered a quiet string of apologies over and over. Finally, he pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, and with that, I let myself drift into a deep, peaceful sleep. When I woke up the next morning, he was already gone. I stretched lazily, reaching for my phone. The screen was filled with missed messages, including one from him. "Breakfast is ready in the living room. If you're bored, feel free to come to the office." I smiled, feeling a little giddy from the sweetness of his brief message. It was like honey drizzled over my morning, and I was more than happy to bask in it. "Oh, Ethan," I thought smugly, "this time you're not slipping through my fingers." Still humming to myself, I finished breakfast and checked my outfit one last time before heading out. I'd picked something sexy but not over the top, just enough to turn heads without trying too hard. As I clicked my way down the hall in my heels, feeling confident and ready to surprise him, I stopped short at the sight of another woman standing outside his office. She was dressed in something equally revealing, looking like she belonged on the cover of Office Chic Gone Wild. "Really?" I thought, rolling my eyes internally. "Is this a secretary cosplay convention or something?" But as she turned around, my stomach dropped. Of course. Fiona. Could my luck get any worse? Suddenly, memories slammed into me. Back in college, she'd cried to me about not finding a good internship. And like the naive fool I was, I'd begged Uncle Ethan to give her a shot at his company. Now, here she was, living it up as his assistant. I could kick myself for being so gullible back then. But no matter, I wasn't the same girl anymore. I was the one in control now. Just as I reached for the door to Ethan's office, Fiona stepped in front of me, her voice dripping with fake politeness. Sorry, but the CEO's office isn't for just anyone to walk into. I turned to her, slowly lowering my sunglasses, making sure she got a good look at my face. The moment she recognized me, her expression morphed through a series of hilarious emotions: surprise, anger, and something that looked a lot like jealousy. Fiona grabbed my arm, her nails digging in slightly. What are you wearing? You know Ethan doesn't like girls dressed like this. Go change and then visit him in the hospital. Her grip was tight enough to leave marks, but there was no way I was going to let her drag me anywhere. Yet she kept pulling, her nails biting into my skin as she tried to steer me toward the elevator. Just then, the door to the office swung open and Ethan stepped out, his brow furrowed in confusion. What's all this noise about? I immediately shook off Fiona's hand and rushed over to Ethan, tears welling up in my eyes as I threw my arms around him. She's bullying me, Ethan. I whimpered just loud enough for everyone around to hear. I held up my arm, showing off the red marks Fiona had left, and let a few well-timed tears slip down my cheeks. Ethan's expression darkened, his gaze shifting to my arm as his fingers brushed over the marks. His eyes softened, filled with concern, and I could feel the tension in his body. Out of the corner of my eye, I glanced at Fiona. Her jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might crack a tooth. Why her? I could almost hear her thoughts. Why does she get to be so close to him? Her nails dug even deeper into her palms, her anger barely contained beneath her fake smile. By now, the office staff had gathered around, whispering among themselves as they watched the scene unfold. Did you see that? One of them muttered. Fiona's been throwing herself at the boss for ages, and he never even looked her way. Guess it's because he's already got a girlfriend. Yeah, and she wouldn't even let her into the office. Talk about awkward. She dresses like she's auditioning to be a car show model, not working in a corporate office. Laughter rippled through the group, and I could practically see Fiona's face getting redder by the second. Desperate to save face, Fiona tried to squeeze out some crocodile tears of her own, sniffling and putting on her best poor me expression. But it was too late, the damage was done. No one was buying her act anymore. Chapter 6. Watching this scene was like witnessing a live soap opera. She could win an Oscar. No wonder she managed to fool me in 2 lifetimes. She's got some skills. Too bad the man she cares about is in the hospital, and I won't give her any chance. She was about to speak when I cut her off. Ethan, fire her, or I'll tell your parents you bullied me. Fiona froze, never expecting me to pull this stunt. And this statement caused another stir among the employees. Seriously? This girl and the CEO are already at the meet the parents stage. She's like a princess from head to toe, unlike Fiona, who's more like a nightclub cat. The difference is obvious. Ethan looked at Fiona, his gaze icy cold, and said, "You can go to HR. No need to come back." Fiona felt her world collapse, trying to grab Ethan's sleeve, but the janitor, who had long been annoyed by her antics, stuck out a mop and tripped her. She fell flat on her face, and the employees burst into laughter. She had made plenty of enemies by flaunting her position. I pouted at Ethan. "Uncle, my leg hurts." He looked at me with a mix of exasperation and affection. "Wasn't it your hand that got hurt? How come your leg can't walk now?" I deliberately acted cute in front of Fiona, asking for a hug. I bet he wouldn't refuse to hold me. He muttered a soft complaint, then scooped me up. The onlookers were dumbfounded. This new lady boss is something else. She's a firecracker with a sweet center. You could say that. She's got a bit of a sweet side. I sat on his lap as he tended to the injury on my foot, his eyes showing rare tenderness. "Don't wear these shoes again." I nodded, then leaned lazily against his shoulder. At that moment, my stomach growled loudly. My face turned beet red. His brow furrowed. "Didn't you eat breakfast?" I giggled, embarrassed. I didn't eat enough. Trying to lose weight, you know. He squeezed my waist lightly. You're not fat. I laughed and leaned closer to his ear, whispering seductively, you know if I'm fat or not. Who snuck into my bed last night? He was momentarily speechless, his cheeks turning a suspicious shade of red. He cleared his throat, then draped his suit jacket over me. Don't wear so little to the office again. It's not appropriate for others to see. I nodded absent-mindedly. Sure. I'll only wear so little in front of you. He paused at the door, seemingly deep in thought. When he turned back, the flustered and secretly pleased expression was gone. This man could switch moods like the weather. I had to marvel. Men's hearts are like needles at the bottom of the sea. While I was enjoying my meal in the restaurant, I was shocked to see someone I never wanted to encounter again in this lifetime. Ethan had gone to the restroom and James, dressed as a waiter, pushed open the private room door. He limped with dark circles under his eyes. He no longer had the cool campus heartthrob look. He approached, trying to grab my hand, but I quickly avoided him. Ethan hadn't returned yet, and this private room was quite hidden. I wasn't confident I could take him on alone. I had to stall. Seeing my outfit, he frowned slightly. Why are you dressed like this? Did Ethan force you? Seeing my silence, he felt even more convinced, looking at me with a pained expression. Claire, come with me. I'll treat you well forever. I shook my head, indicating I couldn't leave now. I had too much unfinished business. Seeing my reluctance, his eyes turned fierce. You must come with me today. I was calculating my chances if we actually fought. But then I noticed a glint of silver in his pocket. It was a knife. Chapter 7. I knew what he wanted, so I had to placate him, saying it was just a temporary measure, and I needed to secure more assets before leaving with him. His eyes wavered, repeatedly asking if it was true. I nodded vigorously, assuring him it was. Only then did he let go. Where he had touched my skin felt slimy like a snake's tongue, making me nauseous. My stomach churned with disgust, but I held it back. He leaned in, telling me how hard it had been, being chased and hiding. He said he was thrilled when Fiona contacted him about seeing me again. I silently mocked, these two are like lingering ghosts. I bet it was Fiona contacting you that made you happy. Just as he tried to get closer, Ethan returned. He pushed open the door, his eyes devoid of the tenderness from earlier. Replaced by the cold disdain of a superior, he gave a slight nod, and his bodyguards surrounded James. James glared at Ethan. Do you think Claire likes you? She did all this because of me. Who do you think you are? Ethan's brow furrowed, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he smirked, exuding an invisible authority. He stepped closer to me, his chiseled face looking intimidating. He pulled me up and without a word kissed me fiercely, as if trying to merge us into one. I tilted my head back, accepting his kiss, my hands wrapping around his neck, gently stroking his nape to reassure him. This was my first kiss, also his declaration of ownership to outsiders. Despite being with James before, we had never been intimate. Seeing this, James's veins bulged and he began cursing. After releasing me, Ethan scooped me up, saying to his bodyguards, break his legs and throw him on a boat. Make sure he never comes ashore again. I stared at the man above me in shock. People always said he was a gentleman with a heart of steel. This one sentence shattered my image of his gentle and kind nature. James panicked, going from cursing to begging. Please don't break my legs. I swear I'll never bother Claire again. It's all Claire's fault. As we walked out, I saw Fiona waiting for us at the door as expected. Seriously, one after another, they keep causing trouble. Fiona had put on a pitiful makeup look, her eyes red. Any man seeing her would probably feel sorry for her. She approached, but before she could touch Ethan's sleeve, the bodyguard brushed her aside. Even as she fell, she maintained a frail, willow-like demeanor. Sobbing, she said, I don't know what I did to upset Claire so much. Weren't we best friends? She even squeezed out a few tears. Hearing this, Ethan paused, looking at me as if to ask if I had anything to say. My fiancé is really a soft-hearted one. Even now, he's still considering my opinion. Since she asked, I might as well tell her. First, you're not my best friend. You're just an illegitimate child with no status. Second, you covet my fiancé, repeatedly trying to seduce him. Lastly, you disrupted my family life for the past 3 years. No amount of makeup could hide her face turning pale and then green. She never expected the once easily manipulated me to become so assertive. She wanted to say something more, but Ethan simply carried me away. He placed me in the back seat of the car, and the atmosphere inside was tense. Chapter 8. I watched his tense profile, guessing he was worried about my earlier words. I. We spoke at the same time. Feeling playful, I said, "You first." He hesitated. "When I got back, the door was locked. I came late and made you afraid. I'm sorry." For a moment I was stunned, but his words, like sweet honey, flowed into my heart. I smiled, moving closer to him and wrapping my arms around his neck. You hadn't arrived yet, and I noticed he had a small silver knife in his pocket, so I didn't dare make a move. I had to say nice things to stall him. I didn't know how much of our conversation he heard at the door, but when he broke in, I saw panic and heartbreak on his face. If I didn't clear this up, he would silently suffer for a long time. Hearing that James had a knife, he went from shocked to furious. How dare he? If anything had happened to you, I put my hand on his lips, shaking my head gently. There's no if. Nothing will happen to me. With you protecting me, I'll be safe. His eyes turned red. At this point, if I didn't realize he had also been reborn, I'd be a fool. His fingers trembled, his breath uneven. He leaned in and hugged me tightly, as if trying to merge us into one. It was his way of cherishing what he had almost lost. Ethan and I had been busy preparing for our engagement, practically running ourselves ragged. One night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. I tugged at his sleeve. "Hey, have you been in love with me for a long time?" He was still working, typing away on his laptop. He absent-mindedly replied, That wouldn't do for me." I climbed onto his back, drawing circles on his ear. "Do you know my nickname?" His typing paused for a moment, then he softly said, "Claire Bear." As soon as he finished speaking, I kissed his cheek. He froze, then realized the pun, and a smile spread across his face. He pinched my hand, asking if I was tired. I shook my head, saying no, but I wouldn't last long. My head bobbed on his shoulder. I couldn't fall asleep. I had a surprise to give. I had browsed different sites for fun outfits, and the one I wore was the most flattering. Thinking back to the scandal with Ethan last week, even though he reassured me it was a misunderstanding, I was hurt. So no turning back. I took off my robe, climbing into his lap, straddling him. He glanced at me, his eyes narrowing, his breath growing hotter. Wearing his gold-rimmed glasses, he looked incredibly alluring. He cursed softly, "Little minx." Then he grabbed me by the waist and laid me on the bed. His eyes were filled with emotion, and finally he couldn't hold back. One hand cupped my head, kissing me fiercely. "Keep tempting me then."